Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I am going to be bringing you my own NFL mock draft, which is still quite early for mock drafts. There's still a lot that can unfold between now and the draft at the end of April. The combine is this week. It starts this week. The new league year doesn't start until March 13th. There's a whole lot of movement that is going to be happening over the next couple of weeks that will inevitably affect how the draft plays out. But for now, I thought it would be pretty fun to just have an excuse to talk about football, which is, as I'm sure you're well aware if you've watched my channel for any length of time, one of my favorite subjects to talk about. So let's get right into it. We're starting with the Chicago Bears. And I think it is well understood at this point that the Chicago Bears are going to be taking Caleb Williams with the first overall pick. I know there are still some Bears fans out there who are big on Justin Fields, but the reality of the situation is that Justin Fields only has a year left on his contract. And is Justin Fields really worth picking up a fifth-year option on and paying him like $27 million or whatever it is for the fifth-year option? I don't think it is. And I don't think you look at Justin Fields and you go, hey, this guy was like the 27th best quarterback, and this is his fourth year. Surely something will change. Because I think the Bears ownership did that gamble on Fields this year when they traded last year's first to the Carolina Panthers and got DJ Moore, right? Because we've seen it before where, maybe a quarterback is struggling in their first or second year, and then, a team will go out and just get an absolute superstar wide receiver. And I'm not saying that DJ Moore is that kind of guy, like you saw with the Bills a couple years ago when they went and got Stephon Diggs, or the Eagles a couple years later when they went and got A.J. Brown. We've seen this kind of thing in today's NFL where it's like, hey, our guy, we want to believe in him. We want to see what he can do. Let's go get him a proper weapon. I think that's what the Bears did last year. And I think after watching the games, yes, Justin Fields could be a solid bridge quarterback. I think he will continue to be a starter next year, but not for the Bears. So when you have a guy like Caleb Williams, who only needs to be better than 27th in the league, how do you not just say, hey, here's a guy who's younger, cheaper, and doesn't really have a lot of pressure to be a superstar right away, right? So I think Caleb Williams, easy pick for the Bears. With the Washington Commanders at second, I think it's another easy pick, Drake May. In a kind of similar situation to the Bears a little bit, where Sam Howell, their quarterback, there might be potential there, right? We've seen some flashes from him. We've seen that he can kind of sort of look like a professional NFL athlete. Do you want to gamble on that? I don't think you do, right? Because in any other class, Drake May would be the first overall pick without question. He just happens to share a class with Caleb Williams. And there is, still some small potential that Drake May is selected as the first overall pick. Do I really believe that? Not particularly, but I think to pass on Drake May would be a huge missed opportunity for the Commanders. And while I don't think they're a quarterback away, I think they have a lot of issues that they need to solve on that roster, especially on defense. Stability at quarterback is huge, right? It's hugely important to have stability there. So I think they take Drake May. Maybe they accept that, hey, we're not going to be good yet. We'll build around this guy and then we'll be good in like 2 years. So I think that might be the thinking in Washington. So Drake May, number 2. Now, number 3 is where it gets really, really interesting, because there are a lot of rumors right now that the New England Patriots are going to trade this pick. And the Patriots are a lot like Washington, where the roster is just from top to bottom needs a complete restructure. They don't have wide receivers, they don't have tight ends, they don't have an offensive line, they don't have a quarterback, they barely have a defense. there's a lot of work to do in New England before they're back to the spotlight like they were under the Tom Brady and Bill Belichick years. So I don't think they're a quarterback away either, and I think they might be going for a different strategy because the thing you have to understand, right, with quarterbacks in this class, it's Drake May, Caleb Williams, and everybody else, right? So maybe they look at Jaden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Penix and they say, hey, these guys are more of a project than we're willing to commit to right now, right? And I don't know that I disagree with them because I think Jaden Daniels certainly has his limitations. I don't think he's a guy that you should pick in the top 5. But teams do get desperate for quarterback. So are the Patriots going to look at this and say, hey, we're not ready to commit to, developing a guy. We've got other areas that we want to focus on. I could see it, really. I could see the Patriots trading back. They trade back all the time. Well, they did under Bill Belichick. I don't know if their new GM is going to have that same philosophy, but regardless, I think the most entertaining option, this is my belief, I think the most entertaining option is the option you should strive for. And in this scenario, I think what would be really cool is if we say, hey, what if the Chicago Bears see this opportunity to give the Patriots a call and they say, hey, we'll give you... Now, I'm not going to mock the actual trade compensation because nobody ever gets that right. This is just for demonstration purposes. So let's say the Bears give up whatever picks and Justin Fields to New England to make this trade work, and they say, hey, give us that 3rd overall pick, ladies and gentlemen. We're taking Marvin Harrison Jr. I think this would be such a stunning move by the Bears. I think this would be a game-changing move. I think this would immediately tell the people of the National Football League, hey, we think we are closer to competing than you give us credit for. They did finish like 8-9 or something. Something to that effect. 8-9, 7-10, something like that. They kind of went on a little bit of a streak at the end of the year, so maybe they think, hey, we're closer to this thing than you guys give us credit for, and we're going to prove that right now. We're going to go get the best wide receiver in this class. We got the best quarterback in this class. Watch out for the Chicago Bears, right? I could totally see this happening. 100,000%, I could totally see the Bears going up to 3. Because at 9, right, there is a potential that they're just going to go wide receiver anyway. So why wait, Just go up, get Marvin Harrison Jr., and, of course, they got DJ Moore last year when they traded down with the Panthers. They got DJ Moore, and I think that was sort of the let's gamble on our guy sort of move from Chicago that we've seen with Josh Allen and the Bills when they got Stephon Diggs, Jalen Hurts on the Eagles when they went and got A.J. Brown during the draft. So we've seen this sort of thing before with different front offices that are like, hey, if we want to gamble on this guy and see if he's legit, let's get him a proper weapon, see what he can do. And I think that's exactly what Chicago did last year when they got DJ Moore. And, things played out the way they did, and maybe they go, hey, Justin Fields isn't the guy, but DJ Moore maybe isn't either, right? Like, I'm not the biggest DJ Moore fan. I don't think DJ Moore is anything special. He's certainly good, don't get me wrong. I don't want to diminish his ability by any means, but I don't think DJ Moore is like that bona fide stud superstar kind of guy. And in this scenario, if you have DJ Moore as your second option behind Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that is ridiculous. I think that is an opportunity you don't want to pass up, especially because I think the NFC, the conference, is very weak. I think it's anybody's game, even though San Francisco made it to the Super Bowl this past season. They did not look like world beaters. I think it's really anyone's game. I think the parity in the NFL is at a level that has never been seen before, especially in the NFC. I think literally anybody could get hot and make it to the Super Bowl. And we'll talk about some of these other teams too. in a little bit, but that is my take on what's happening here at 3. If any of that made any sense, I don't know. But anyways, now that Marvin Harrison Jr. is off the board, the Arizona Cardinals, who have been mocked to take Marvin Harrison Jr. like the entire time during this pre-draft process, what do? Do they stick and take Malik Neighbors, who is very good, ridiculously good, or do they find a trade partner? Now, let's think about this, okay? So, Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone, right? Cardinals' number 1 guy is gone. So, do they look and say, Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze are still here. Can we trade back and still get them? Well, the Chargers need a wide receiver. The Giants need a wide receiver. Tennessee could probably use a wide receiver. So trading back with these guys is pretty much off the table because you don't want to give them the opportunity to come up and get their guy. And then if you trade behind them with Atlanta, you could miss out on your guys too. So I think there is also the possibility, and I want to throw this out there because I've been thinking about it a lot, because the Arizona Cardinals have a lot of draft compensation this year. I think it's like 13, 14, 15 picks, something like that. They have a ridiculous amount of picks. And as you can see here, they have 2 firsts. Okay? There is the distinct possibility that the Arizona Cardinals could call somebody like the Raiders and say, hey, give us Devontae Adams, Do I think it's very likely? No, but, I just want to say the possibility is there. But in this scenario, I think they're just going to stick right where they are, and they're going to take their second option, Malik Neighbors from LSU. Now, the Chargers, a butterfly effect is taking place here. Wide receivers are flying off the board, maybe a little faster than they expected with the 5th pick. Maybe they thought they would have their choice of the matter between Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors. Now, that's not really true. They need an offensive tackle. They need a tight end. They need D-line. What do? Well, I think they say, you know what? The wide receivers are going. We can probably find wide receiver later. I don't feel comfortable drafting a tight end yet, even though Brock Bowers is insanely good. I think the Chargers are going to answer a phone call. So, let's see here. I think Atlanta sees a distinct opportunity here. They're going to call the Los Angeles Chargers, and they're going to say, hey, give us whatever we need to do to move to 5, and we're going to take quarterback Jaden Daniels out of LSU. Now, again, as I said with Jaden Daniels earlier, I'm not sure that I would take him with the 5th overall pick, but teams always get desperate for quarterback. Always teams are going to get desperate for quarterback. So maybe the Falcons are that team that says, hey, this guy's a little bit of a project, but we can manage. We can do it. They play in a weaker division than the Patriots do, significantly weaker. The NFC South is probably the weakest division in football right now, because the AFC South isn't anymore, and they were for a very long time. So it's probably the NFC South. You've got the Saints, who God knows what they're doing, the Buccaneers, the Falcons, the Panthers are a mess. Maybe they see this and they go, hey, let's just stack our roster with ridiculous athletes, and it'll all figure itself out. So I could for sure see this happening. And maybe it'll happen normally anyway if the Falcons feel like trading up to number 3 to get Jaden Daniels at 3. Who knows? But this is my mock draft. This is my alternate reality. So argue with a wall. Anyways, moving now to the 6th overall pick and the New York Football Giants. The New York Football Giants have watched the board unfold, and they say to themselves, there's no more quarterbacks that we're willing to take at this pick, but Mr. Rome Odunze is right there for the taking. Let's do it. and they finally get to the point when they say, hey, let's get our quarterback a wide receiver and see what he actually can do. They missed the point where other teams did that before signing their quarterback to a massive extension, so we'll have to forgive them for being a little bit late to the party. But that's fine. The Tennessee Titans at number 7. For the longest time, I've always been mocking a tackle to the Titans. In all of the mock drafts I've done, I do it a lot. It's a problem, but I think offensive tackle is their number one need by far. It's been their need ever since Taylor Lewan started to decline a couple years ago. And they just haven't, they've struck out so many times. But this is probably the best tackle class we are ever going to see in our lifetimes as football players. Now, I'm not the most informed individual when it comes to offensive tackles, because a lot of times when you transition from the college to the NFL level, college tackles will transition to guards because they don't have the size they need in the NFL, which is, absurd to think about because these are huge human beings. However, I think it's my understanding with everything that I've read that this is a true tackle class. These are true plug-and-play blue-chip tackles that you can get from this draft class. And a lot of teams need offensive tackle. Like pretty much everybody here except maybe Minnesota on this board right now probably could use an upgrade at tackle, but the Titans more so than most. And then at this point it just comes down to preference, because these top 4 guys, Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, Talisi Fuaga, JC Latham, these top 4 guys could be the first tackle off the board. It just comes to preference. My preference is Olu Fashanu. I really like Olu Fashanu. I think he'd be a great pick for the Tennessee Titans. Now, this is where there are 2 prospects here that the Chargers really liked at 5, and they're both here at number 8, Brock Bowers and Joe Alt. Huge impact players for the Chargers. Now, the Chargers' new offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, recently came out and said they want to run the ball a lot, which leads me to believe, there was some rumors a little bit that the Chargers would go Brock Bowers, but I'm starting to think, because the offensive coordinator said they want to run the ball a lot, and Jim Harbaugh ran the ball a lot at Michigan, I think that pretty much confirms that Joe Alt will become a Charger. Now, the New England Patriots traded down to number 9 with the Bears. Is this where they say, hey, J.J. McCarthy's here, maybe we are willing to play project after all? I think the possibility, is really there if the Patriots trade down to number 9, that they could go, hey, I want to develop a guy. However, much like the Chargers, they also could use a tight end. Is this where, after Bill Belichick leaves, they finally find their Rob Gronkowski successor? Possibly it is. Now, when you're in a situation where your entire team is a disaster and you need to rebuild from the ground up, do you take tight end? Probably not. However, as I stated previously, I believe the most entertaining option is the one you should strive for. And I think having Brock Bowers go to the Patriots after Bill Belichick spent years and many, many picks trying to find a new tight end and signing a bunch of veterans that turned into nothing, I think it would be really funny for Brock Bowers to show up in New England and just become a world-class tight end. So, we now have the New York Football Jets, and I think they've kind of really gotten lucky here that they're at pick number 10 and Talise Fuaga and J.C. Latham are still here, because Mekhi Becton has not worked out in New York. And, we just saw Aaron Rodgers at the start of the season last year tear his Achilles, which was devastating. Of course, that was a non-contact injury, but he's coming off of surgery, coming off of a major leg injury. You don't want opposing teams to be getting to that, to your quarterback coming off of an injury. So I think Talise Fuaga, congratulations, welcome to New York. They really just beef up that offensive line to try and protect Rodgers while he's still able to perform at a high level. Of course, we don't know what he's going to look like coming off of that injury, but we'll see. Now, the Minnesota Vikings gets really interesting, right? The Minnesota Vikings were rumored last year to have made a huge offer to move up in the draft to get Anthony Richardson. Of course, that didn't take place. The Arizona Cardinals, who they were alleged to have wanted to trade up with, traded with the Houston Texans instead, and Anthony Richardson ended up on the Colts. So, is this a year where they, try again to get to 3? They talk to the Patriots, because me personally, the way I see it, I don't think there is a better place for a rookie quarterback to succeed than the Minnesota Vikings right now. They have their offensive line mostly figured out. They could probably use a better center. The interior could use a little bit of tweaking. But the important part is they have 2 franchise tackles. Of course, their right tackle has a bit of an injury history, but that's not as important, as they have one of the best left tackles in the entire league. The unfortunate part is that he's probably the 3rd or 4th best tackle in the NFC, so he never wins any awards. But those other guys will get old soon. But anyways, they have their O-line figured out. They have the wide receivers. They have the tight end. Running back, not so much, but running back you can just sign in free agency, or you could draft a guy like 4th, 5th round and swing and hope it works. And then you have their defense, which is not good. It is far from ideal, of course, and Kirk Cousins is a free agent, so do they go for J.J. McCarthy here? I think it truly depends on whether or not they re-sign Kirk Cousins, right? If they re-sign Kirk Cousins, maybe they aren't so inclined to get aggressive with quarterback. If they don't re-sign Kirk Cousins, maybe they're another team that gets kind of a desperate move, because me personally, I think I'm higher on J.J. McCarthy than a lot of other people. But again, I do believe that he is more of a project player and will need to develop. But I think the Minnesota Vikings are such an absurdly perfect place for any rookie quarterback. So I think it could be worth a gamble for Minnesota, and especially because I don't think he's going to make it past this next group of 3 teams right here. Denver, Las Vegas, New Orleans. I don't think J.J. McCarthy gets past this part of the draft in any scenario. So, what are they going to do on defense? I don't know. But in my universe, in this alternate history, J.J. McCarthy goes at number 11 to the Minnesota Vikings. And maybe if you're a fan of a team in the NFC North, you are reeling with joy right now. I don't know. But I think if J.J. McCarthy is going to succeed in the NFL, which I think he will, at a point, I think J.J. McCarthy will be a very good NFL quarterback. I think his best option is Minnesota. So then you get to Denver. And Denver also needs quarterback. There is nobody left on the board that I think you take in round 1. Maybe somebody reaches on Bo Nix. I'm not really sold on Bo Nix, so we're going to pretend he doesn't exist for the rest of this class, for the rest of this draft. I think the Denver Broncos are going to try and rebuild the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks, because they already have Patrick Surtain, who is a ridiculously good corner. they don't really have the safeties, and they don't have a second option in that secondary. So it's like, you have Patrick Surtain, yes, but what if a team has a second wide receiver? They're just gonna, have a career day because the Broncos secondary is just one guy on an island, and that doesn't really work in today's NFL. So I think Terry and Arnold, welcome to the Denver Broncos. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting, because there is a lot of pass rushers here that have fallen off the board. And much like tackle, a lot of teams can use pass rushers, edge rushers, pass rushers, whatever you want to say. A lot of teams, like pretty much everybody here, right? Pretty much everybody you see above you right now would be stoked to get a pass rusher. In this specific instance, the Raiders are the least pressured to get a pass rusher because they have Max Crosby, who is always in conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. It feels like incredible player. What do they do outside of that? They could use a second wide receiver. I don't think they're going to go for wide receiver here. What's left for tackle? J.C. Latham is still here. I think that could be a good pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. They need an upgrade at quarterback, like I said, but Bo Nix is not the guy for this specific instant. There are also a couple of corners here that are probably going to be very good players, but I think the safest option for the Raiders is probably just take J.C. Latham. Now, the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints. I think this team is terrible. I have beef with this team. I don't like the way it's run. I don't like the way it's built. Ever since Drew Brees left, I hate that they, for context, I should say, Drew Brees is one of my favorite players ever. I love Drew Brees. I loved watching him growing up. But the way they built their teams around Drew Brees, even when they didn't have to pay him a bunch of money, was just a travesty. They never really they never really built a proper contender. It felt like they were always lacking something. Whether it was corner, whether it was wide receiver, whether it was a pass rush, whatever it was. I have beef with the Saints for that. I will never forgive them for that. So I think they're, by the time free agency starts and the new league year is over and, we get a clearer picture of what's going on, I think the Saints, in a competition with only Washington and New England, I think they might have the worst roster in the league next year. That being said, they've gotten really lucky. They have their choice here of edge rushers, and I think it's really hard for them to pass up on an edge rusher, especially because Cam Jordan is only getting older. I don't know that they'll be able to pay Peyton Turner next year, even if they want to pay him, which, is debatable. I think it makes the most sense for them to just pick up an edge rusher. In the same vein as the New Orleans Saints, I think the Colts would also find it very difficult to pass up a pass rusher if this scenario were to play out and they find themselves staring at their pick of the litter. So I think Jared Verse will follow shortly after and end up in Indianapolis. And as the run continues here on pass rushers, I think it will continue, and Leatu Latu will end up on the Seattle Seahawks. So we see 3 pass rushers back to back to back, and then it will be one of the talking points of the year. Like last year we saw 4 wide receivers go towards the end of the draft. If I remember correctly, it was Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, back to back to back to back. And like the entire year it was just like, oh, who got it right, whatever. It was not the Chargers, that's for sure, with Quentin Johnson. So I think that could be a fun storyline to just say, hey, wasn't it crazy that all those pass rushers went back to back? So I think it just makes so much sense for all 3 of those teams. Jacksonville too. Because, who knows what they're going to do with Josh Allen. They're probably going to tag him and extend him, but, they could use help on the edge. But at this point, I don't think you look at this and go, yeah, these are the guys that I want, right? So, corner also makes sense, and, maybe we could see a run on corners followed, because all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all 6 of these teams could use corner. Maybe this is where that run starts. I think it does. I think Quinyon Mitchell ends up in Jacksonville. The Cincinnati Bengals, depending on what they do in free agency, obviously, I think they could use some more secondary help. But, maybe in this scenario, they re-sign Chibodi Awuzie, they find a guy in free agency, who knows. I think it would also be really interesting to see, let's see, Jerson Newton's here, Johnny Newton. Don't really like that fit too much, though. I do like Johnny Newton. But of course, do they sign DJ Reader? Could be an interesting hypothetical. If they don't sign DJ Reader back, then yeah, they probably go for Johnny Newton or Byron Murphy. In this scenario, I honestly feel like with the way the board is, and because, I don't have the information of what they've done in free agency, maybe they find a way to trade. Let's take a look. What's here? Why is it Jacksonville? Hold on. Let's see. Maybe. You know what? I think because, let's see, where Philadelphia is, right? All the teams in front of them could use some secondary help. Philadelphia also needs help in the secondary. And maybe I see a scenario here where the Philadelphia Eagles say, hey, let's move up a couple spots and let's grab, do they want Nate Wiggins or Kool-Aid McKinstry? I'm leaning, normally I mock Kool-Aid McKinstry to the Eagles, but in this scenario, they've jumped ahead. And I think they're going to take Nate Wiggins instead, and then Kool-Aid McKinstry follows shortly after and ends up in Los Angeles. And then Cooper DeJean ends up in Pittsburgh. And I enjoy how all of that has shaken out, because, again, all of those teams, and even, Miami, need help in the secondary. And we see a nice little wonderful run there on defensive backs. I like the fits of most of those. Cooper DeJean, of course, Pittsburgh took Joey Porter Jr. last year in the second round, and he's been good. But, you can't have one guy in the secondary, especially in today's era when teams are so pass-heavy and wide receivers are starting to be viewed as like the third or fourth most important player on an NFL team. So it's very important to have your secondary figured out. And we've got 12 more picks to get through here. Let's try and get through that. So, Miami. The edge rushers are all gone. The corners are not really there. Don't really need wide receiver. They could use a new center, I believe. I don't actually know who their center is right now, but I could see Cincinnati or Miami or Houston being the player that goes for Jackson Powers Johnson. Pace up an upgraded center. I have another place in mind where I think Jackson Powers Johnson goes somewhere down here, but in this scenario, this also could be a trade down with Miami. Let's see here. Maybe this is where like the second run on tackles start, right? Because these three guys here, Amarius Mims, Troy Fautanu, Tyler Guyton, are all still really, really good. They're not in that upper echelon with the Olu Fashanus and Joe Alts, but these guys are still all very good players. And, I can see teams here. But I think there is a scenario that I am interested in where... No, that's not what I meant. I meant Miami and Dallas make an agreement. Dallas moves up 3 positions, and they take Troy Fautanu. And then Cincinnati. Now, in this scenario, I am under the assumption that Cincinnati has not re-signed DJ Reader, and in that case, they would need to find an upgrade on the defensive line. And in this scenario, they have their pick between Johnny Newton and Byron Murphy. I think they go Johnny Newton. And everybody celebrates. They've replaced DJ Reader. The Houston Texans could use D-line help. Could definitely use some help on the defensive line. I think that would actually go kind of crazy because they got Will Anderson last year and he's been really good. And if they get a guy like Byron Murphy to be really disruptive up the middle, I think that could be a beautiful sight to behold. So that is what I'm going to predict in this scenario. So Byron Murphy to the Houston Texans, beefing up the defensive line, especially because the division there in the AFC South, there are not a lot of great O-lines down there, so I've talked myself into it more and more the more I think about it. I like that pick. The Miami Dolphins trading down to number 24. There's still some great tackles here. Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton. There's nothing there on the edge, really, that I could see them going. So I am going to say they go Amarius Mims. And then the Green Bay Packers. This is where, I sort of saw Jackson Powers Johnson as a possibility. With the Bucks, too, I could see. In this scenario, there's not really... I don't really feel the allure to Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Of course, the combine hasn't happened yet. Players can move up or down. We'll see how that goes. They definitely don't need wide receiver. Not really sold on some of these edge players at the moment. I think the safe bet is probably Tyler Guyton. I don't think they would complain about that. Now, let's see here. Is this where the center goes? It's possible. It's definitely possible. I think more likely than not, we're going to start seeing a run on wide receiver here. Because there's still some wide receivers in this class that, all the way down to like Xavier Worthy could be end of the first round, start of the second round guys. In this scenario, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mike Evans is very unlikely to come back. Chris Godwin has an injury history that maybe you're a little bit worried about. I think this is where Brian Thomas Jr. finds his new home. Now, the Arizona Cardinals already solved their wide receiver issue earlier in the draft. And maybe now is where they go, for Ennis Rakestraw or... Yeah, there's not really anyone after that, I don't think, that I look at and go, yeah, this is the guy. Is there any D-line prospect that could make a move on T'Vondre Sweat? I should preface I am a big Texas Longhorns fan. I love the Texas Longhorns. I think T'Vondre Sweat is getting, a little bit undervalued. on a lot of these mock drafts. I'm a big fan of his. I think he will dramatically rise up the board come the combine. He's not as good. Very obviously, he's not as good as his teammate Byron Murphy. He doesn't have the same kind of pass rush upside, but he's a big guy in the middle of the defense. Very good in stopping the run. So I have convinced myself T'Vondre Sweat to the Arizona Cardinals. And then the run on receivers continues. Keon Coleman will end up with the Bills. I don't know what they're going to do with Gabe Davis in free agency. Stephon Diggs is only getting older. I don't know if you trust Khalil Shakir to make that leap to be the number 2 guy. I think Keon Coleman makes way too much sense, especially because they drafted a tight end last year, and he has improved every single week, I think. I can't think of his name right now, but they drafted a tight end last year that I really enjoyed watching. I thought he was very good. So, the Detroit Lions. Now, there are some Detroit fans that will not agree with what I'm going to do here, but I think you have to get a receiver if you're Detroit, because I don't know that I trust Jameson Williams, and I don't know that Amon-Ra St. Brown is enough. And yes, they do have Sam Laporta as an absurd tight end. Sam Laporta is insane. But again, it's just like, I feel like, obviously their secondary is in hell, right? The Lions secondary is probably the worst in the entire NFL. It is not good. But where this stands, I'm not sold on any of these guys in the first round. They'll probably pick a guy up in the late rounds. And what I think, my personal prediction for the Lions is that they go and get like a Chipotle Awuzie in free agency or something like that, or L'Jarius Sneed in free agency. So I don't think, corner is as desperate of a need as it is currently. So I could easily see, Troy Franklin, Adonai Mitchell, something like that going here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say Troy Franklin to the Detroit Lions. Now we are on the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are a really complete team. Wide receiver is maybe not the best for them. How do they feel about Ladd McConkey or an Adonai Mitchell? I don't know. For the sake of what I think is going to happen, I'm not going to give them Adonai Mitchell because there's a specific place I want Adonai Mitchell to go. Again, as a Texas fan, so I don't think they're going to go for Ladd McConkey either in this scenario, despite my belief that wide receiver is like one of their biggest needs, and one of the biggest needs for a single team ever is the Baltimore Ravens need for wide receiver. I think maybe this is where Rakestraw ends up in Baltimore. I'm not like super convinced on that. It's just I don't know what to do with the Baltimore Ravens other than give them a receiver, and I'm not going to do that this time around. So Jackson Powers Johnson has fallen quite a lot, and I think the San Francisco 49ers will be eager to jump on the opportunity for Jackson Powers Johnson. And then Adonai Mitchell, my beloved Adonai Mitchell, I think he ends up with the Chiefs, and I think he does beautiful, beautiful things with the Chiefs. So this is my mock draft. I don't know if it'll show us the final results here when I click save. We'll find out. It does. Okay. Yeah. I have an ad blocker, whatever. So let's quickly take a grand old look if it will not let me scroll. Well, that's unfortunate. I was going to show you the rest of my mock draft, but it does not appear that I can scroll and move down the board. So there's my top 5, at least. You can see that. I thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. I will talk with you all again soon, and goodbye for now.